Most people think being trapped means losing control. That belief comes from open spaces, rings, streets, rooms where movement feels like freedom. But on a quiet evening in 1972, inside a luxury hotel in Hong Kong, that belief was about to collapse. Bruce Lee wasn't looking for trouble. He was dressed sharply, gray suit pressed clean, tie straight, shoes polished enough to reflect the warm lobby lights. A meeting with film executives had just ended. Contracts discussed, futures planned, nothing unusual. He checked his watch. 8:47 p.m. 18th floor. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime. Empty, mirrored walls, tight dimensions, efficient. Bruce stepped inside and pressed the button. The doors began to close. Then a hand stopped them. Large, confident, casual. 3 men entered. The space changed instantly. What had felt neutral now felt compressed. Their bodies filled the elevator. Their presence pushed Bruce into the back corner without touching him. The doors closed. The hum of the lift began. Most people, in that moment, would feel fear rising. Bruce didn't. Because some fighters are trained for distance, and others are trained for inevitability. And in a box with nowhere to run, inevitability always wins. Before we continue, if you love the stories of Bruce Lee and want to help keep his legacy alive, subscribe to this channel, like, and share. The first man stood closest. Tall, broad, heavyweight build. His nose had been broken more than once, never set properly. One ear thickened with scar tissue, the unmistakable mark of a professional fighter. His hands looked like tools, not limbs. The second man blocked the control panel behind Bruce. Shorter, stocky, neck thick as his shoulders. A wrestler's frame, built for grabbing, squeezing, controlling. The third stayed to Bruce's left, leaner. Longer arms, balanced stance even when standing still. Someone who trained, someone who watched. They smelled like beer, confidence, numbers. The biggest one smiled when recognition hit him. "You're Bruce Lee." The tone wasn't admiration. It was ownership, like spotting something rare and deciding it belonged to you now. The other smirked. Bruce nodded politely. The man stepped closer, too close. "You really fight?" he asked. "Or just movie fight?" Bruce kept his hands at his sides, loose, not clenched. He answered calmly, "I train." That word made them laugh. To them, training meant rings, gyms, space. It meant size, reach, power you could measure in pounds and knockouts. And looking at Bruce compact, controlled, calm, they believed they were safe. That was their second mistake. The elevator climbed. Floors ticked by quietly. 8, 9, 10. The largest man leaned in, invading Bruce's space completely now. His breath was heavy, confident. He spoke like someone explaining a fact, not issuing a threat. "You know the problem with your style?" Bruce didn't answer. "It only works up close," the man continued. "But you're small, too small. All that speed doesn't mean shh if you can't hit hard." The others laughed again. Then the elevator stopped. Not smoothly, not at a floor. The car jerked slightly and settled between levels. The lights flickered once, then stabilized. The hum continued, but the motion was gone. The man had hit the emergency stop. He ripped the phone cord from the panel and let it drop to the floor. Silence. No alarm, no escape, no help coming. The biggest man spread his arms slightly, grinning wide now. "Here's the thing," he said. "Guys like me need space. Rings, distance. You?" He leaned in until his face was inches from Bruce's. "You need closeness. And this box?" He smiled. "Nowhere to run, little man." Bruce looked at all three of them slowly, calmly, his breathing steady. 5 seconds passed. Then he spoke quiet, controlled, dangerous. "I'm just deciding which of you goes down first." And in that moment, they finally understood. He wasn't trapped. He was exactly where he wanted to be. The biggest man laughed. It wasn't nervous. It wasn't uncertain. It was the laugh of someone convinced the outcome was already decided. He cracked his knuckles slowly, each pop echoing inside the metal box. The wrestler shifted behind Bruce, blocking the control panel completely. The third man adjusted his stance, angling his body to cut off any movement to the side. No rush, no chaos yet, just control. They believed they had engineered the perfect situation. No exits. No witnesses. No space. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, buzzing softly. The mirrored walls reflected four bodies packed too tightly together. Every breath felt louder than it should. Bruce pressed his back lightly against the wall, not in fear, in alignment. He lowered his center of gravity by an inch, hands still loose, fingers relaxed. The boxer rolled his shoulders and raised his guard, a textbook stance, bouncing lightly on the balls of his feet, even though there was nowhere to bounce to. "That Wing Chun stuff," he said, "needs space, speed, angles." Bruce said nothing, because he knew something they didn't. Boxing needs room to breathe. Kicks need distance to load. Wrestling needs leverage and balance. But close-range systems weren't born in rings. They were born in hallways, in stairwells, in spaces exactly like this. The boxer stepped forward, and in doing so, he stepped into the worst possible place. The punch came fast. A sharp jab classic, efficient, meant to test range and assert dominance. The boxer expected Bruce to flinch, to lean away, to react like a smaller man always does. He didn't. Bruce stepped forward. 6 inches. The punch slid past his ear, missing by less than a finger's width. And suddenly, Bruce was inside the boxer's reach, a range where gloves and guards mean nothing. Bruce's left hand snapped up, slapping the extended arm down and pinning it. His right palm followed instantly. The strike wasn't wide, wasn't flashy. It was precise. Jaw. The boxer's head snapped back, cracking into the mirrored wall. The glass shuddered but held. His eyes went empty for half a second long enough. Bruce didn't pause. He surged forward with short, mechanical punches. Bridge of the nose, cheekbone, temple, each strike compact, direct, ruthless. Then the body. A final palm slammed into the solar plexus. Air left the boxer's lungs in a violent rush. His knees buckled. His guard collapsed. He slid down the wall, semi-conscious, blood pouring from his nose, gasping like a fish out of water. 6 seconds. The man who believed size was safety was already finished. And the others hadn't even processed what they'd seen yet. The wrestler reacted on instinct. He lunged forward and wrapped his arms around Bruce from behind, locking his hands across Bruce's chest. Pure strength, crushing pressure. Lifting slightly off the floor. "I've got him," he shouted. For a moment, it looked convincing. Bruce's feet left the ground an inch. But Bruce didn't fight the squeeze. He reached back calmly, found the wrestler's hand, and isolated one finger, the smallest one, the weakest link. He pulled. There was a sharp, dry snap. The wrestler screamed and released instantly, clutching his hand as pain tore through his nervous system. Bruce dropped cleanly to the floor, landing on his feet without losing balance. Before the wrestler could step back, Bruce kicked low, not to the body, not to the head. The knee. A lateral strike. Joint-based, no power wasted. There was a dull pop, followed by a scream that filled the elevator. The wrestler's leg folded under him. He crashed to the floor, curling inward, shock setting in. 2 down. The third man backed away instinctively until his shoulders hit the wall. Hands up, now. No laughter left. This wasn't intimidation anymore. This was survival. And Bruce was already moving toward him. The third man froze. He wasn't laughing anymore. His hands came up instinctively, palms open, elbows tied to his ribs. The stance of someone trained but unprepared for this range. He tried to speak, to slow it down, to rethink everything. Wait, Bruce didn't stop. Bruce Lee stepped in with the same calm he'd carried all night. The man panicked and threw a desperate front kick, aiming to create space. Bruce redirected it with a small outward motion, barely touching it, sending the leg offline. The man was suddenly standing on one foot. Bruce swept the support leg. The fall was inevitable. His back slammed into the wall. On the way down, his head clipped the brass handrail with a sharp metallic clang that echoed inside the elevator. He collapsed in a heap, dazed, vision, swimming, breath knocked loose. Silence returned. 3 men down. 1 elevator. 12 seconds. Bruce stood at the center, suit slightly wrinkled from the struggle, breathing elevated but controlled. No cuts, no bruises. 1 strand of hair had fallen across his forehead. That was it. If you're still watching right now, this is the moment that separates stories from lessons. Subscribe, like the video, and tell me in the comments, have you ever mistaken space for safety? Bruce waited, counted breaths, assessed threats. There were none left. The elevator hummed. One man whimpered on the floor, clutching his knee. Another slid down the mirrored wall, blood streaking his chin. The third lay still, blinking, trying to understand how standing had turned into falling so fast. Bruce's hands relaxed, fingers loose again. He stepped carefully over the injured leg and reached the control panel. The emergency stop glowed red. He pressed it. The car jolted slightly, then resumed its climb. 15, 16, 17. Every vibration sent pain through the men on the floor. They groaned softly. Bruce adjusted his tie, straightened his collar, smoothed the creases in his jacket. Professional again. The doors opened on the 18th floor. Warm hallway, lights spilled in, plush carpet, quiet, normal. Tell the hotel you fell, Bruce said without turning around. Or tell them the truth. See which story keeps you out of jail. No one answered. Bruce stepped out. The doors closed behind him, cutting off the sounds. The elevator descended, carrying consequences with it. The hallway was peaceful, untouched. Bruce walked to his room, slid the keycard, and closed the door. Inside, he finally exhaled, sat on the edge of the bed, counted his breathing until the adrenaline faded. He hadn't needed to run. The lesson didn't end in that elevator. Weeks later, Bruce stood in his school, explaining distance to students, how some systems need space to work, how others are born without it. He demonstrated inches from a wall, showing how efficiency replaces motion when room disappears. Someone in the back listened closely. The third man. Older now, quieter. He'd come to learn. Decades later, analysts would say the same thing in different words. The best fighters don't rely on one range. They adapt. They understand environment. They make space work for them. People love quoting "be like water" as philosophy, but that night proved it was practical. Water in a wide river flows gently. In a narrow pipe, it becomes pressure. That elevator was a narrow pipe. The men thought nowhere to run meant helpless. For Bruce, it meant clarity. The truth is simple. The best fighter isn't the biggest. It isn't the loudest. It's the one who understands where the fight actually happens. And in that elevator, the fight happened exactly where Bruce had trained for all along. Years later, people would still ask the wrong question. They'd argue about styles, about who would win in a ring, about size, weight classes, reach, power. Bruce Lee never answered that question directly. Because the elevator wasn't about proving that Wing Chun was superior. It wasn't about humiliating three men. And it certainly wasn't about violence. It was about context. In a boxing ring, the boxer thrives. In open space, the kicker shines. On the ground, grappling dominates. But remove space, and everything changes. That night exposed a truth most fighters don't like to face. Techniques fail when the environment doesn't support them. Principles don't. The men in that elevator believed strength was something you brought with you. Bruce understood that strength is something you adapt to the moment. They saw a trap. He saw a solution. That's why Bruce never bragged about the incident. He rarely even mentioned it, because to him, it wasn't extraordinary. It was confirmation. Confirmation that fighting isn't about who you are when things go right. It's about who you are when everything collapses around you. And in 2 square meters of steel and silence, Bruce Lee didn't rise to the occasion. He simply remained himself. Nowhere to run sounds like a threat. To most people, it means panic. It means fear. It means helplessness. But that night proved something uncomfortable. Sometimes, nowhere to run is exactly where clarity begins. Bruce Lee didn't survive that elevator because he was faster, or stronger, or more aggressive. He survived because he trained for reality, not for ideal conditions. He trained for hallways, for crowds, for corners, for moments when options disappear. That's the difference between learning techniques and understanding principles. Techniques need permission to work. Principles don't. So the next time you hear someone say there's nowhere to run, ask yourself this: is that really a weakness? Or is it just the moment when excuses finally run out? Because Bruce Lee never needed space. He made the space work for him.